Alright, today live review of a classic Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Buffalo Trace. Plain Jane Buffalo from the Buffalo Trace Distillery, which is obviously owned by the Sazerac. 45% alcohol, 90 proof, chill filtered, yep. Roughly 7 to 9 years of age is what they tend to say. Who knows? It's non-age statement. It is straight bourbon whiskey, so it's at least 4 years old, but they tend to say 7 to 9 years, something like that. Mash bill number 1. So this is less than 10%, the less than 10% rye mash bill from Buffalo Trace. And it's their kind of just entry-level old product. I guess it's maybe higher quality than Benchmark, which is the same mash bill. I guess it's maybe a higher shelf than Benchmark. I don't know. But here we go. Plain Jane Buffalo here. Again, we're going to rate this out of 100. 25 for aroma, 25 for palate, 25 for finish, 10 for texture, and 15 for my personal subjective opinion. Look at this. Synthetic fucking cork. Can you believe it? Go. Spinoramo. Alright. So here we go. Again, this is straight bourbon, so no color added. And this is roughly the color we're getting at supposedly 7 to 9 years. Of course, new charred oak barrel in Kentucky. Now again, this is a low. Let me make sure this is the low rye mash bill. I'm pretty sure it is the low rye mash bill. Boom. Mash bill number 1. Yeah. Yes, this is mash bill number 1, which is 10% rye or less. So this is the same mash bill again that they use for Old Charter, E.H. Taylor, George D. Stagg, Stagg Jr., Eagle Rare, Benchmark, which is different than mash bill number 2, which is the high rye mash bill, which is used in H&H, Elmer T. Lee, Rock Hill Farms, Blanton's, and this idea. And of course, different than the wheated mash bill that gets used for Weller and Pappy. So that's all we know really about the mash bill. Is this one in particular is the low rye variant, so less than 10% rye. So there won't be too many like rye spicy kind of notes in this. It's gonna be like softer than that, but it's not a weeder like Weller is. I'm just gonna give that a minute. So the Buffalo Trace Distillery, of course, built in 1805 in Frankfort, Kentucky, and is considered to be the oldest operating bourbon distillery in the United States. If you didn't know that. There's a little bit of cocoa kind of note coming off of that, so I'm going to give it a minute still. I don't know how to describe the ethanol note, but for me, there's like a note that kind of smells something like cocoa powder, which is not, which is ethanol. It's like not, it's just alcohol note. So I try to like get to the point where I'm not getting that anymore. I don't know if there's like a better way to describe it. For me, it kind of comes off as cocoa, like cocoa powder. Um, and I kind of smell it on pretty much every single whiskey right off the pour, so I know it's not like a whiskey related note. It's like it's just an alcohol note. They got cigars too. Buffalo Trace has cigars. Surely they don't grow their own tobacco. Buffalo Trace cigars, huh? I wonder who makes these. I get the feeling they get made and then a Buffalo Trace label gets put on it. I'm getting conflicting information. What it says here is produced by Meyer and Dutch, which I think is a subsidiary of Scandinavian Tobacco Group. Yeah. So it's wrapped in Ecuadorian Sumatra leaf, and with Brazilian binder, Nicaraguan long fillers. But it comes from, if this is true, then it comes from Meyer and Dutch, which I don't know. They're kind of just a wholesaler, I thought. Factory Cigar, General Cigar Dominicana. So it's interesting. It seems like they're made in the Dominican from with an Ecuadorian wrapper, Brazilian binder, and Nicaraguan filler. If that tells you anything. I'm not a smoker, but and I wouldn't be surprised if Four Roses was the same. This literally the same cigar, but who knows? There's a good woodiness to this. Again, some sweetness, some wood. A small amount of that kind of buttery note. I'm getting a little bit of like table syrup. Some dark baking spice too. I'm not really getting like a red fruit note from it. It's mostly like buttery, woody, spicy, with a little bit of like table syrup at the bottom. There's maybe just like a touch of like a herbal note, which is maybe a little bit surprising considering it's a low rye. But for me, there's still a little bit of like something you would call pine, like a fresh cut pine or something like that. It's not as sharp as dill, but it's almost like maybe like the sort of woody note is a little bit herbal. If you wanted to call that like a fresh cut pine tree, I'd be in for that. It's not like really super duper pine forest, but you do get a little bit of that. I feel like I smell a little bit of like corn grain too, but it's not the worst. It's bourbon flavors. All right, here we go. Buffalo Trace on the palate. Cheers. A bit light on the palate. You get some of that spice and wood. A little bit of sweetness. It's a little bit thin for me though. Again, some dark spices and woodiness on the back end. Kind of missing that real like kind of like slightly salty popcorn note, which I tend to enjoy in bourbon. Kind of missing that a little bit here. Having said overall, it's a little tame. Of course, we're talking about bourbon whiskey at a lighter ABV. So, if you're used to taking your bourbon at like over 50% alcohol, like bottle and bond strength or higher, you're going to probably find that this is a little bit thin at 45. But that's maybe a bit expected. Just because it's 45 doesn't necessarily mean it should be thin, though. So to me, the thinness is like something to do with like the concentration of the flavor, and not like the fact that it's diluted necessarily. And 45 is a reasonable strength. And you know, other bourbons like Elijah Craig Small Batch, for example, do fairly well at 47. But the initial impression is that 45, this is hitting a little bit thin for me. Like I kind of get this on the palate and it kind of the flavor kind of goes away. Again, mostly like a bit of sweetness, wood, spice. Nothing crazy. Anything kind of similar on the palate, like a bit of sweetness, wood, spice. Don't have like a fruit flavor there. Doesn't really dip into, again, low rye mash bill. Doesn't really dip into like any of those advanced complex flavors like licorice or anything. A little bit thin on the palate. You get into the finish, you get some more spices. Again, sweetness is present. More oaky. If you want to go with like a coffee at the end, that's probably fair. It's kind of like what you'd expect from a bourbon. Maybe a little bit tame in terms of like if you really like a bitey bourbon, really like your bourbon aggressive, you know, or really get a slap out of it. This is not going to slap you around. It's like pretty tame, pretty drinkable. Not too much complexity to it. Not too much bite to it. Again, just sweet. A little bit of that cut pine. Some of that little bit of like corn grainy note. Spices. Like really missing for me is like a cherry fruit or like a more robust sweetness with layers like you kind of get from, say, Michter's small batch, or like even a Woodford double oaked. Like if it had like layered sweetnesses, I don't really get that. I kind of just get the woody note, the spicy note. There's a little bit of a sweet note, and then you kind of get like more of the oakiness and maybe darker notes if you want to go coffee or like unsweetened chocolate on the finish. Sure. Definitely missing like a fruity character at all, like that, like a cherry or anything. It's pretty like, as you'd expect, you know, fine bourbon sort of tier. Intensity's mid-level. Maybe more intense than a really smooth drinking blended scotch or something like that, but for a bourbon, it's very tame. All right, so a 25, the aroma. Again, not the strongest. A couple things going on. Intensity is really like dropped off some, at least at this point. I don't see aroma. We're gonna go 12. It's just not the best. Palate out of 25. Sweet, spicy, woody, a little bit thin, nothing to write home about. I'm gonna go 13. And again, finish at 25. Start with some like bitterness, dark spices, slight sweetness. Oak kind of develops. And then like at the back, which like the length's like medium, it's like fine. Like it's not short or anything. In the back of the finish, you kind of get like a darker thing if you want to go coffee or like bitter chocolate or something like that. We'll go with 15 on the finish. So texture, I guess texture out of 10, which is not the worst, but it's a little bit thin on flavor. Actual mouthfeel's maybe not so bad. It's like, okay, you know? With a 4. So out of 15, my personal subjective opinion with this Buffalo Trace Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's a pretty standard, like above 40 ABV, typical bourbon sort of offering. Drinks kind of pretty, a little bit low in intensity. You kind of get some of the core bourbon aspects, like, you know, it's woody, it's oaky. You get a little bit of corn in there. You get some spices in there. Missing that, like, you might expect from a bourbon. Any kind of, like, real presence of rye-related herbal spice notes or rye at all. Or like red fruit, like if you want to try to find like cherry in this, good luck. It's kind of missing some of the highs, but has most of the lows. That being said, there's nothing like complicated on the palate. Like you don't really get, you know, chocolates and leathers and tobacco. These aren't things that really land for this bottle for me. It's kind of just what you'd expect from a bourbon, reasonable. At a smooth proof, I suppose. So like that, it really is not really doing anything exciting. It's not trash. It's just fine. You know, among other like mid 40% bourbons, I feel like this has a hard time really standing out as anything other than run of the mill, at least in my personal opinion. This is not like, you know, just as good as Stag Sublord Proof or something like that. It's clearly just kind of fine. So for that, not terrible, not great. We'll give it a strong 5. I think 5's fair. 5 out of 15. So together, 25 and 40, 49. We call this. We'll give this a 49. It's good. It's just barely good. It's almost okay. It's fine. You know, it's fine.